media platforms, Facebook and YouTube. I'm Erin Imana. We'll be reading the news for you today. Stay tuned. Proceeding to the details. In its statement issued today, Ethiopia's Ministry of Communication has announced a call for a humanitarian truce in the ongoing conflict with the government of Tigray. Abiy Ahmed's government said that this was an effort to alleviate looming humanitarian crises in Tigray. The Communications Affairs said that it would end hostilities starting from Thursday, March 24, 2022, and said that it hoped for an immediate end to the almost 17 months long conflict. Tigray External Affairs Office issued a statement on Thursday regarding the extrajudicial killings of 3 aid workers employed with Doctors Without Borders. The statement was issued following a report by the New York Times last week that attributed the killings of 3 aid workers to soldiers from Ethiopia's National Defense Force. The office called for an international and independent investigation to all atrocities and said that this would be imperative to ensure justice and accountability for victims. Abel Zagabu has more.
Tigray External Affairs Office issued a statement on Thursday regarding MSF employees killed in June of 2021. The statement was issued following a report by the New York Times last week that attributed the killing of the 3 aid workers to soldiers from Ethiopia's National Defense Forces. Maria Hernandez, Yohannes Hallafom, and Tedros Gebremariem were killed while in active duty following a direct order from a senior commanding officer of the 21st Infantry Division of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. The statement said the murder of these aid workers falls in line with the invading forces' ethos of impunity for international humanitarian and human rights law, and said the crimes represent the tip of the iceberg in terms of atrocities committed on the people of Tigray. The office called on the international community to demand that Abiy Ahmed's regime accept the legitimacy and mandate of the UN Delegated Investigative Commission to inquire into atrocities committed. The office called independent investigation by an impartial international entity indispensable to bring atrocities to light and ensure accountability for victims of atrocities. The statement thanked MSF and its employees for their invaluable effort to make health care available to Tigrayans and expressed its condolences for the brutal murder of the 3 aid workers. The statement finally called on the regime in Addis to refrain from obstructing humanitarian operations and allow aid agencies to operate freely, impartially, and independently wherever their services are needed.
Religious leaders have called to an end to the devastating siege in Tigray that has left more than 83% of the population in a very desperate need of food aid. The religious leaders called on the international community to play its part to ensure that millions don't perish due to man-made famine. Saron Tigray has the details.
Abuna Isaias, Archbishop of Mekelle, Haji Muhammad Kahsai of the Islamic Affairs of Tigray, and Father Tu'um Barha from Catholic Church Nativity of Mariam Mekelle stated that Tigray has been besieged for more than 8 months, leaving millions with no access to basic necessities, and that lives of millions are at the brink. Abuna Isaias says the denial of access to critical services like banking, electricity, and communications, and the deliberate blockade on humanitarian aid is a chokehold upon the people of Tigray. The Archbishop stated that the international community must act immediately to prevent the deaths of millions.
There is no banking service, no electricity, no running water, no transportation, and no communications. On top of that, aid is being blocked from reaching those who desperately need it. The international community needs to give due attention to this and do something to help save lives.
Haji Muhammad of the Islamic Affairs of Tigray also expressed the catastrophe unfolding in Tigray needs to get as much attention as the one in Ukraine, and that humanity must come first.
We're watching the war on Ukraine. Even though there is a heavy fighting, humanitarian assistance is reaching to those who need it because humanity is above all. I wonder why this isn't being practiced on Tigray.
Father Tu'um Barha, on his part, emphasized that we are reaching a point where nobody can help anybody within Tigray, and that the existence of the people of Tigray is in question. The father quoted that tomorrow might be too late, and that political leaders and the world must open their eyes and their heart.
Tomorrow is too late.
We have people with their lives at the brink. Tomorrow might be too late for them. Political leaders of the world, may God open your hearts. People of the world, May God open your eyes. Tigrayans under immense suffering. May God give you hope and be with you.
The religious fathers cautioned that the international community must stop watching the suffering of millions from sidelines and take tangible measurements to end the deliberate starvation upon the people of Tigray.
Tolda Gabramariam has resigned from his position as CEO of Ethiopian Airlines, ending his 11-year tenure at one of the largest and most profitable airlines in the world. Our reporter Sablor Lama looks back at Tolda's long reign at Ethiopian and his complicated legacy. Sablor Lama reports.
Ethiopian Airlines CEO of 11 years, Tolda Gabramariam, announced his resignation on Wednesday due to a deteriorating health condition. Tolda had been in the United States for over 6 months receiving medical treatment before his resignation earlier this week. In his tenure as CEO, Tolda has overseen remarkable growth. Ethiopian Airlines, Ethiopia's flag carrier, had tripled its fleet from around 40 when he took office in 2011 to 120 today. There was also a fourfold increase in passenger number from 3 million to 12 million pre-COVID. They have also built more than $700 million of infrastructures like Africa's biggest hotel, cargo terminal, shops, and aviation academy. The exceptional performance of the airlines was also demonstrated in its annual profits that grew from $1 billion to $4.5 billion. Tolda's career saw him win a number of awards. In 2012, he won African Business Leader of the Year award from the Corporate Council of Africa. He again won Professional Excellence Award and the Airline Strategy Award for Regional Leadership in 2013.
Now that we have achieved almost all the parameters that we have placed for 2025, 7 years ahead of the time. So by 2018, when we made the review, most of the targets have been achieved, and the driving force was to make Ethiopian Airlines the leading aviation group in the continent, and it is already since 2018. So now it is time for us to review the environment, review our capabilities, and see what we can be in the future. We as an airline believe that the airline should have 15 years strategic roadmap at any point in time on a rolling basis. So since 2025 has still 5 years to come, and we came up now with 2035, meaning 15 years strategic roadmap from now. So it is already the largest airline in Africa. Not only the airline, but also in cargo, in MRO, in aviation academy, in catering, and the others.
Tolda's tenure did, however, have its ups and downs. While the airlines has continued to show rapid growth and even managed to attain profits in the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic, the airline's involvement in the ongoing conflict in Tigray that has been marked by gross violations of human rights, including the use of rape and famine as a weapon of war. In a CNN report in October of 2021, CNN had exposed documents and verified images that confirmed the involvement of the Ethiopian Airlines in the shipments of weapons from Ethiopia to Eritrea, an act that violates civil aviation laws that prohibit airlines from transporting weaponry.
State-owned Ethiopian Airlines is Africa's premier carrier of passenger and freight traffic. But among the regular cargo, evidence of sinister shipments. CNN can reveal, based on documentary evidence and witnesses' accounts, Ethiopian Airlines has been transporting weapons between Ethiopia and Eritrea since the beginning of the war in Ethiopia that has seen thousands killed. According to aviation experts, this would constitute a violation of aviation law. Among the evidence are these stills that were taken on board Ethiopian Airlines flight ET3313 and verified by CNN. It's the middle of the night. This cargo plane is being loaded by hand, a slow and unorthodox method. But look closer. This isn't usual cargo. Inside these boxes are mortars. They are being loaded onto this civilian aircraft and transported from Eritrea to Ethiopia. Here is the cargo manifest, corroborating the day and time, November 8th, 2020. The date is significant. It's just 4 days into the conflict and months before Eritrea officially admits to being involved. That relationship between Ethiopia and Eritrea began months earlier, in November 2020, which coincided with an increase in the movement of weapons, shuttled back and forth from the Ethiopian capital to Eritrea. An Ethiopian Airlines employee turned whistleblower spoke to CNN about how he had to deal with an unusual request.
So my car I'm thinking about
In various statements, Ethiopian Airlines has always adamantly denied ferrying arms on passenger or cargo planes. But in addition to speaking with whistleblowers, verifying cargo manifests and authenticating stills, CNN has obtained airway bill receipts that show at least 6 occasions in November where Ethiopian Airlines billed the Ethiopian Ministry of Defense to ship military items, including guns and ammunition, to Eritrea.
At the outset of the conflict, Ethiopian Airlines would take part in the ethnic profiling of Tigrayan employees and their subsequent firing. Pilots, carriers, technicians, and security guards, employees with different ranks and professions in the airline would be told to hand over their badges. The dismissal of Tigrayan employees by Ethiopia's flag carrier would be confirmed by multiple international media organizations and human rights groups, as well as state-appointed Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. Tigrayan employees of Ethiopian Airlines would risk their lives to escape from the country. According to a report by CNN, 2 Tigrayan ground technicians working for the airline hid in the storage section of a converted cargo Airbus for a 7-hour flight to Brussels, Belgium, due to fear of being ethnically profiled, arbitrarily detained, and killed. The technicians hid in one of the aircraft's secret compartments for more than 3 hours before departure, and then 7 hours of flight with no food or water. One of the technicians had lost 4 of his relatives, while his fiancée and 7 months pregnant sister remained in prison in Afar region. Tigrayan passengers were also ethnically profiled by Ethiopian authorities and told they couldn't board Ethiopian Airlines flights. Ethiopian Human Rights Commission Commissioner Daniel Bekele would call the rising number of complaints alarming and said passengers traveling from multiple reasons, including work and medical treatment, were being turned back before they could board their planes. Actions by the Ethiopian government that the airlines is yet to openly condemn. According to New York Times, that sourced a pilot and a foreign diplomat, Tolda Gabramariam himself was barred from leaving the country and boarding a flight to Paris on November 8. In a statement issued on March 23, Ethiopian Airlines Board of Management had announced that it had approved a request for early retirement by Tolda, which he requested in order to focus his full attention on his medical treatment, leaving many questions about the legacy of its most prominent CEO to date. Much of his tenure had represented a time of rapid growth and success for the airlines, but also a time of institutional violence against Tigrayan employees and customers, acts the former CEO has yet to condemn.
The blockade on humanitarian aid, a devastating siege that has discontinued all basic services and lack of medical supplies, has devastated over 6.5 million people in dire need of humanitarian assistance. Our reporter, Winta Kidane, asks why has the delivery of aid into Tigray remained so fragile and 17 months into a devastating civil war?
ዞን 2 በኩል 4-5 ወረዳዎች በወራሪው ኃይል በመያዛቸው በተለይም ደግሞ እርዳታው የሚያልፍበት የአባላ ኮሪደር ሙሉ በሙሉ እነሱ ስለተቆጣጠሩት እርዳታው መንቀሳቀስ አልቻለም። እነሱማ እርዳታው ወደዛ እንዲሄድ አይፈልጉም እኮ። እርዳታው ወደዛ አካባቢ ከሄደ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ የኢትዮጵያ መንግስት ላይ ጫና የማሳረፍ አቅማቸው ይቀንሳል። ስለዚህ የኢትዮጵያ መንግስት መንገዶቹን ዘግቷል። እርዳታ በአካባቢ አልደረሰም፣ ህዝቡ እየተራበ ነው ብሎ ለመጮህ ስለሚመቻቸው እና ይሄንኑ ዓላማ አድርጎ ስለሚሰሩ መንገዱን ሙሉ በሙሉ ዘግቶታል። ሙሉ በሙሉ ለቆ መውጣት ነው። ለቆ ወጥቶ መንገዱን ነፃ ማድረግ ነው። መንገዱ ነፃ ከሆነ ኢትዮጵያ መከላከያ ሰራዊት በዛ የለም፣ ሌላ ኃይል የለም ሄዶ ውጊያ የሚፈጽምና እርዳታው ወደዛ አካባቢ እንዳይሄድ ስለሚፈለግ ነው እንዲህ የሚባለው።
This statement was made by Ethiopian Communications Minister Lagasa Tulu. His statement was made in response to allegations that trucks carrying food aid and other essential supplies had been looted by vigilante groups on their way to Tigray. The United Nations would issue a statement later dismissing the report by Ethiopian officials that any trucks carrying aid had attempted to make the journey to Tigray, continuing a 3-month-long blockade on aid agencies attempting to deliver aid through the Samara Ab'ala Maqala corridor that has served as the only accessible route for the delivery of aid since the start of the conflict in November of 2020. The statement by the minister begs the question, is the Samara Ab'ala Maqala route the only access point into Tigray? The answer to that question is, of course, no.
It's not the only route we have to Maqala or to Tigray, by the way. We have more than 10 alternative routes if you want to come to Maqala or to Tigray.
The 4 land routes that either originate or travel through the Amhara region have been blocked either by Fano Vigilante Group or regional authorities, including a route Addis Ababa, Dessie, Lalibela to Maqala, another route from Bahar Dar through Debark that can reach Shira through western Tigray, and another that travels through Gondar into Maitebri and Shira. Another route can go through Bahar Dar and Debark in Amhara region. Abraha Desta, former higher official in Abiy Ahmed's government, had this to say about the looting and obstruction of aid by Amhara authorities and Fano vigilante groups.
ማድረግ ያለብን ነገር የፌደራል መንግስት ይሄንን ህገወጥነት በአማራ ክልል መንግስት እየተሰራ ያለው ሽፍትነት እንዲያቆም ተዛዝ መስጠት አለብን ማስቆም መቻል አለብን
Other routes that originate in Sudan through western Tigray are also being blocked by Amhara forces and allies from Eritrea. The blockade through Sudan is not only intended to block aid but also to ensure that international bodies are not able to witness the ethnic cleansing campaign in western Tigray that has seen the killing, torture and displacement of millions of Tigrayans.
This is really the only safe place for many Tigrayans, and the Ethiopian forces, Ethiopian allied forces, Ethiopian government forces, we're told, are blocking that. That's a war crime. Blocking safe passage to fleeing communities would meet the metrics, the guidelines for a war crime.
President of Afar Regional State Awal Arba has gone on national television multiple times to say that regional authorities will not allow access into Tigray and considered the hindrance of humanitarian aid into Tigray an important tactic of war, blocking the remaining routes that travel through Afar region. In a parliamentary address in late February, Abiy Ahmed would confirm that national forces were in fact working in cooperation with Afar regional authorities toward similar ends.
አፋርን በሚመለከት የፌደራል መንግስት ከአፋር ክልል መንግስት ጋር በከፍተኛ ቅርበት ነው የሚሰራው በከፍተኛ ቅርበት በሁሉም አሁን ባሉት ነገሮች በየሚዲያው የሚባለውን አቃለው ግን እንደዛ አይደለም በቅርበት የሥራ ክፍፍል አድርገን የምንሰራው ማንኛውም የአፋር ጥቃት የኢትዮጵያ ጥቃት ነው የአማራ ጥቃት የኢትዮጵያ ጥቃት ነው
The blockade could have also been averted by using another option that can allow aid workers safe access into the region, and this is the establishment of a humanitarian corridor, which the Ethiopian government has so far refused to do. A humanitarian corridor is a temporary demilitarized zone to allow the safe passage of humanitarian aid as well as refugees out of a crisis region. Humanitarian corridors have been put in place since the mid-20th century and have served to ensure safe access to humanitarian workers and refugees in many places, including in Bosnia during the 3-year-long Sarajevo siege. But the Ethiopian government has refused to establish any safe access into Tigray, allowing regional forces to obstruct humanitarian work with impunity. But the blockade and its devastating impacts clearly demonstrate a much sinister intent on the side of the Ethiopian government and its allies. ISAD, a state-affiliated media, has been calling for a blockade on Tigray long before the conflict erupted in November of 2020. In fact, it had been calling for a blockade on the region for well over half a decade.
አንደኛም በአማራ ክልል የምንገኝ ኢትዮጵያውያን ከትግራይ በደሴ ወደ አዲስ አበባ ሁለተኛም ከወልዲያ ወረታም ከሽሬ ጎንደር ከሁመራ ጎንደር ከመተማ ጎንደር ያሉ መንገዶችን በድንጋይ በእንጨት መተላለፊያውን በመዝጋት የአፋር ወገኖቻችን ከትግራይ መቀሌ ከዊሃ በሸሂድ አፍዴራም አሳይታ የሚወስደውን በጠቅላላ በመውጣት በድንጋይ በእንጨት መተላለፊያውን በመዝጋት
The Ethiopian government is attempting to accuse itself of any responsibility for failure to deliver much-needed aid into Tigray by claiming the existence of conflict in border areas. But a lot of international experience will teach us that if parties to a conflict are keen to ensure the access, there will be a way to deliver essential supplies.
We have been trying from WHO side, to have access to send drugs to Tigray and the other affected areas by the conflict. We were permitted to send medicines to Afar region and Amhara region, while we were not allowed to send to Tigray region. So there is a blatant measure which has been taken, that's blockade, and since especially July, no medication was allowed from WHO, none whatsoever. Nowhere in the world you would find a crisis like what you see in the northern part of Ethiopia, especially in Tigray. Nowhere in the world are we witnessing hell like in Tigray. Even in Syria, we have access during the worst of conflicts in Syria. In Yemen, the same, we have access. Humanitarian access, even in conflict, is the basis, the basics. Conflict cannot be an excuse.
The blockade on humanitarian aid traveling into Tigray has been successful, with just 6% of necessary aid reaching Tigray since June of 2021. People not taking part in hostilities have a right to humanitarian assistance. This right flows from the international humanitarian law as well as international human rights law, including the right to food and water in case of natural or other disasters. States have the responsibility to ensure this right, but where a party is not just unable but actively obstructionist, working to willfully impede the passage of relief supplies, these actions may be held as war crimes under the Rome Statute.
Massacres, rape, mass and arbitrary detention of Tigrayans have been just some of the many devastating features of the ongoing conflict. Our reporters spoke to a woman that survived horrific acts of sexual violence in western Tigray and was to make the long journey to safely in northwestern Tigray. Salome Tigrai has more.
The war on Tigray has seen the widespread use of sexual violence to terrorize and humiliate women and girls in Tigray. Many were held captive for days as Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers took turns raping them. In a report issued in August of 2021, Amnesty International would say the violence committed on Tigrayan women was done with the intent of inflicting lasting physical and psychological damage on women and girls. Letabrahan is one of 1.2 million Tigrayans displaced from western Tigray. She says Amhara militia and the Fano, a vigilante group, took her and 2 other women and raped them for several days.
The Fano would tell us they wouldn't allow for our bodies to be buried, let alone let us go on living. They told us Tigrayans don't deserve to exist. They tied our hands to the back. It was so tight that no blood could circulate. There were 3 of us in one place. They took us to a remote area and took turns raping us for 9 hours.
Despite the unspeakable violence she experienced, Letabrahan says that after a day's-long journey, she was able to make it to Shira in northwestern Tigray. And while she was able to escape her captives in western Tigray, she has not been able to escape the many impacts of the violence committed on her body.
I was bleeding non-stop for 2 months, and I suffered from pneumonia and other illnesses. I had serious issues with my uterus and I suffered a lot.
She says health professionals are trying their very best to treat her and others like her, despite a 9-month-long siege on Tigray that has resulted in a severe lack of medication and medical supplies.
There are many people by my side. They encourage me not to lose hope and support me. Health workers counsel me and they try their best to provide me basic health service to reduce the complication in my uterus. This is despite severe shortage of medicine and medical equipment.
The torment of survivors of sexual violence in Tigray has been exacerbated by a lack of access to medical assistance. A true process of healing for survivors of sexual violence requires access to essential healthcare needs, including termination of pregnancy, treatment for HIV and hepatitis B, as well as other physical traumas caused due to the violence, and support for depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. Impossible, as the Ethiopian government continues to impose a siege that has depleted medical supplies, that has taken millions to the brink.
The deliberate and systematic destruction of health facilities across Tigray has had a devastating impact on the most vulnerable members of the community, especially pregnant women and lactating mothers, that have not been able to receive the required care. We spoke to the midwifery at the Clinic for Family Guidance in Ma'ala that says the destruction on health facilities, coupled with a 9-month-long siege on the region, has made it impossible for health facilities to provide even the most basic care. Aragaw Garunkel has more.
The deliberate and systematic destruction of health facilities across Tigray has had a devastating impact on the most vulnerable members of the community, especially pregnant women and lactating mothers that have not been able to receive natal care. Hadara Medhan is a midwifery at the Clinic of Family Guidance in Mekelle. He says the destruction on health facilities coupled with the 9-month-long siege on the region has made it impossible for health facilities to provide even the most basic care.
The
number of pregnant mothers who come for follow-up is dramatically declining since the start of the siege, and this might be due to the economic hardship that these mothers are facing currently. The services we can provide for the mothers that can make it to the facility is quite limited. The laboratory is barely functional. We can say that we provide almost no service. We are not able to taste hemoglobin levels or run HIV tests. Due to these problems, mothers have stopped coming up to us. Less than 50% of the mothers that used to come to this hospital for follow-up are still coming.
According to Hadara, mothers' mortality has shown an alarming increase, and this is due to lack of medical supplies.
Mothers are giving birth at home and sometimes even on the road. We haven't been able to run tests at the laboratory, so it could be very difficult to fully understand the condition of expecting mothers. We don't know which mother needs blood and which needs just basic treatment.
Gabra Hawaria Gabra Christos, who works on improving the health on mothers and children at Tigray's Bureau of Health, says mothers are dying due to lack of basic medical supplies that have been depleted due to the ongoing siege.
Before the conflict, the goal was to ensure that not even a single mother dies while giving birth. The situation today is completely different. Many women are dying while giving birth at home.
According to a report from Tigray's Bureau of Health, 7 out of 10 pregnant and lactating women are malnourished, while very few have access to much-needed medical assistance.
The 8-month-long occupation of Tigray, accompanied by destruction of public infrastructures and private properties, and soon to follow 9-month-long siege that has prevented the entry of food aid and other urgently needed items, has caused a catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Tigray. We visited Adugutom, some 35 kilometers from Mala, where local officials there tell us over 12,000 residents are going hungry every day. Salomit Khalai has more.
It's been almost 9 months since the Ethiopian government has closed off Tigray from the rest of the world, blocking the entry of commercial goods, medical supplies, and food aid. This is the town of Adugutam, situated in southeastern zone of Tigray, where its residents, like anywhere else in Tigray, are suffering from war and siege-induced starvation. Sanait Brhana is a mother of 6. She's one amongst many residents that have faced severe starvation in the town. She says she gave 2 of her daughters to someone else, as she has nothing to feed them, and that she has to beg for neighbors to feed the rest.
My children don't have anything to eat. They sleep on an empty stomach. A person I know gave me the house that I'm currently sheltered in. People sometimes give my children something to eat. And as for me, I eat if I find something, and I don't if there's nothing. I'm in a very desperate situation. I've sent 2 of my daughters to someone else with the hope that they can find something to eat there. And the ones that I have with me now go to neighbors and they give them something to eat, sometimes. But when they don't, they come to me and ask me to give them something to eat.
Takien Berha is also another resident of Adugutam. She and her family depended on the salary she obtained as a teacher. But since she hasn't been paid her salary for so long, she and her mother say that the entire family is in a dire situation.
I'm a teacher. I used to lead my life with what I earned from that. There are 7 family members that I take care of. Because of the siege and because there is no salary, I am in a terrible situation. Some neighbors help us with something they have.
Food aid has not reached us in a very long time. We are in a starvation. Children and all of us are about to perish because of the lack of food.
Kahsai Hailu, a local official, says that more than 12,000 people in Adugudem town alone are in severe starvation.
Because of the siege Abiy Ahmed's government imposed, many people in our town have been exposed to severe starvation. There is a total of 35,000 people in the town, and 12,370 people are in a severe starvation. People don't have any income. There is a siege and there are no banks, so the people are in a very terrible situation. Many people have lost their lives because of the starvation. Many have also been exposed to different illnesses.
Earlier this month, Tigray's Office for Emergency Response had announced that more than 6.3 million people in Tigray require immediate humanitarian assistance.
The struggle against Derg that built and sustained a repressive state in Ethiopia for close to 17 years was fought by young men and women across the country dedicated to democratizing the state and ending its destructive nature. These freedom fighters that believed in their nation and recognized their responsibility in its journey towards stability and democratization have unfortunately been the victims of atrocious crimes committed on Tigrayans by foreign forces, Kibram Waldaburhan reports. Oh my God.
Mulanaga, the coordinator of Central Tigray's Association of Disabled War Veterans, says that last year, several unspeakable atrocities were committed on multiple members of the association by the Ethiopian forces and its allies.
The invading forces consider the war veterans as criminals, and for that matter, many veterans were forced to abandon their homes, some of them escaping with their broken artificial crutch. They have gone through tough situations. As a result, 64 veterans who had serious disease died due to lack of medication. We don't know the whereabouts of many of them. Numerous disabled veterans that couldn't run away were killed, especially by the Eritrean forces who deliberately committed this slaughter. These atrocities unfolded on 22 districts of Tigray, especially around the Gala, Rama, and also in outskirts of Ahsa.
Alta Shalamayo, a war veteran, says that her husband Hagus Girmay, who was also a war veteran with disability, had been shot by the Eritrean troops before they shot at Hagus again for the second time at the hospital and killed him.
My husband is also a veteran. They shot him while he was on a duty as an armed security guard at night. After they'd left him there, thinking that he was dead, some people who were around saw him trying to move and took him to the hospital. In the evening of that day, the troops went to the hospital's emergency room that he was in and shot and finished him. They also killed some other people.
Gide Girmay was also a veteran who was shot and killed by the Eritrean forces at the doorsteps of his house on the 27th of November 2021. His veteran wife, Mami Tabay, and his daughter Helen tell the incident as follows.
Our father was just getting back from a church. They called him to come over and shot him at the doorstep of our house. He was a war veteran, and at that time he was unarmed. At that particular moment, I was sweeping our compound. I and my mother went outside, but they threatened to kill us too.
They killed him at the doorstep when he just arrived home, coming up straight from a church that he has been. A soldier called him to come over, and when he glanced at him, he shot him twice with his sniper at his head.
Me and my brother were in our room crying helplessly, and our mother was watching over our father's body for 3 days.
And with that, we're going to wrap up our news for the hour. I'm Mary from Tigrai. Thank you for tuning in.